All right, welcome to Bet the Edge. I'm Jay Croucher here with Drew Dinsick, recording late Sunday evening. We are going to talk a lot of NBA, a little recap of the last day of the season, and look ahead to the playoff games in the West, the play-in games. And we'll talk about the East later, but given the West games are first, we'll tackle them. But first, little quick recap of the Masters, Drew. What did you make of all of it? And I know it didn't treat you particularly well.
No, this Masters was terrible. It was awful. Nothing positive to say at all. It wasn't even entertaining. And I am coming from a place where I'm going to try to keep it as positive as possible here. I got cleaned out. I'm running so cold right now. If the Magic had somehow lost that game to the Bucks today, I probably would have called Adam, our producer, and said, "Okay, just do me a solid, find someone to fill in for me because I cannot be counted on here because that's how cold it's been." And thankfully, the Magic did not disappoint me, unlike every other person I played this weekend to do anything positive. So, here we are. But no, I mean, it's been a weird year for sports generally. Chalk keeps coming in over and over and over again. You want to go backwards in time here. 4-1 winner. And honestly, if you watched much of the Masters, if you watched much of Scottie Scheffler specifically, if you watched every shot he took this weekend, he didn't play that great. He just basically just kind of was out there, just sort of, kind of doing his thing. I thought Thursday and Friday he was weak. He looked vulnerable at times, he was leaving shots on the course. He had specific moments putting where he putted it into the back of the cup and it bounced back at him. And he's like, I don't know what to do. It's but you know what? It didn't matter, Jay. He won going away because he has the thing going right now, which I think Tiger Woods certainly had through the later portions of the 2000s, where, if he just plays as well as he can, if he just plays to his average, the other players are trying to do things, trying to make trying to take chances, and just in general, kind of, wetting themselves on the court on the course to a degree, because it's there were many opportunities for a lot of the guys kind of in contention to score, to put some pressure on Scottie, to even put some distance between themselves and Scottie, and none of them did it. They just let him hang around, and then ultimately he was like, okay, fine, back nine Sunday, I'm in the lead, I'll just flip the switch here, and the rest is history. And it was disappointing to see basically everyone else with a meaningful top, kind of rating, just generally underperform. I'm looking squarely at Rahm first and foremost. I'm looking at McIlroy second. It's if no one's going to step up and try to actually take him on, then he's just going to win major after major, championship after championship. It's not especially entertaining for us as viewers. And we're coming off of, two, highly rated favorites heading into college basketball that both just won. We're coming into a third title and for Pat Mahomes in a year where, yes, they weren't the favorites, but was anyone shocked that Pat Mahomes won another Super Bowl? Michigan was the favorite. They win outright in the college football landscape. The last time we really had a little bit of a shocker was Yannick Sinner winning the Australian Open. And I don't even know how many people besides us care about tennis, but it's just been so chalky lately, and it's tough because they, by every account, I'm frustrated because I had a bunch of plays, matchups, top this, that, you name it, where I was like, man, this is 95% home. And then just random crazy stuff happens at the end of these rounds, at the end of these tournaments. And it's just wow, okay. It's just not my day. It's not my week. It's not my month. It's not my year. And honestly, the fact that all this chalk just keeps coming in these major events is, it's lacking. We're missing some juice. We're missing some drama here. And if ultimately this all changes in the NBA playoffs, I'm going to be even more upset because I don't want the Celtics not to be the champions this year. So we're in a weird place right now. I am certainly.
Yeah, I'd like the chalk to continue for a little bit more between the Celtics, hopefully winning the title, between in the NHL. I would like one of the three favorites, the top three favorites, the Canes, the Stars, and the Oilers, for one of them to get home as well. Then after that, yeah, we can have the Pirates winning the World Series or something. It doesn't really matter. Just be thankful, Drew, that you weren't on the Cavs to win the division,
Oh
because
my God.
that is about as bad as it gets. They were up 13 points with 10:55 left in the game, and what were they? I can't remember. They closed like 14-point favorites over the Hornets.
Yeah.
The
No.
Hornets, who were sitting Miles Bridges and Brandon Miller, the only two guys on the team, who can JB Bickerstaff and the lads, in one of the most gutless moves of all time. They had a guy in named Pete Nance. I've never heard of that person. They're closing they're running their offense through Tristan Thompson, keeps getting blocked. They're getting lit up by someone named Amari Bailey on the Hornets. Don't know who that is. JT Thor keeps blocking shots, and they basically forfeited the game so that they could put themselves in the 4-5 with Orlando, so that they could have a better chance of winning one series, which might be enough to keep some jobs there, as opposed to winning, putting yourself in the 2 or the 3 and giving yourself actually a better chance to make the Eastern Conference Finals or make the finals. But instead, they've decided that they want to beat the Magic in 7 and then get swept by the Celtics in round 2. Anyway, we'll talk about the Cavs and everything in a little bit more detail.
You're not going to believe this, though, Jay. I did have some Cavs.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, of course. No, add that to the burning pile of the burning bonfire that's going on over my shoulder is all of the insane stuff that was insane prices. It wasn't a huge stake, but I did have a pretty big number on them for a big season.
When Bobby Portis hit a 3 to go up, I can see it now in my head. When it was 39-28, early-ish second quarter. The Bucks flip into favorite in the live market pretty quickly. By the way, the Bucks are terrible outside of Giannis. Damian Lillard couldn't do anything against the elite defense in the Magic. And then when they start to finally get rolling, and Franz Wagner is just about the most underrated player in the league, because he really turned it around for them, where he just decided, our offense is terrible. Anytime I have half a step in semi-transition, I just need to go to the hoop and just do my kind of big stepping thing where he just kind of asserts his size and just gets the basket, gets fouled. He was excellent and turned it around for them. But just lastly on the Masters, weird tournament, because I think the winning score market before the tournament was set at 11.5 under, and Scheffler finishes at 11 under, and then only one other guy finishes better than 4 under, our man Ludwig Oberg. And it just seemed like everyone just kind of melted, collapsed, to your point. A lot of big names like Rahm, McIlroy didn't sniff it. Jordan Spieth, I don't know what Jordan Spieth, who just completely melted. And then no one really stepped up to challenge. I understand there was wind and conditions might have been a little bit more difficult than anticipated, but still pretty disappointing that no one was really able to give Scheffler a run after he entered the last day, minus 115, minus 20, minus 120 to win it. I think now he is the territory that he is in. I mean, he was already the shortest price favorite to win the Masters since, I want to say, Tiger Woods in 2012, when Tiger, the end of Tiger's real prime. And the thing with Scheffler is that, statistically, it's always been, outside of the putting, everything else in terms of strokes gained stacks up pretty well to peak Tiger Woods. And now if he's learned to putt, then it's just it's all over. And then it just becomes a question of, how short can this guy actually be to, win kind of random tournaments? Particularly with the amount of guys on the Live Tour now, if he was playing the Valero Texas Open or whatever, he should be plus 200 to win that going in. And at these majors now, if we look at the PGA Championship odds, he's plus 450 going into that. I mean, he may well be shorter by the time that starts, given that he was just plus 450 to win the Masters and kind of won it in his sleep. So what kind of prices do you think we can see on Scheffler? How low does the floor get?
Oh, it gets to peak Tiger Woods pretty quickly here, Jay. My wife was watching with I don't know, 32, 33. He's 27. Like Scottie Scheffler has, like, he has growth. He could get better. Like, this is not like a flash in the pan and a moment in time where you're capturing somebody who's just running. Like he is that good. And we're now at the stage where, after what he did at the Players, after what he did here at the Masters, like, he's going to start inducing mental damage on these guys who's playing against, where they're just like, we can't beat him. We can't beat him. Like, this is what we saw when peak Tiger Woods was just running amok and nobody, like, realistically could ever step toe to toe with him. And it took Tiger specifically, kind of throttling down for, the rest of the tour to catch up. And if we see this again, like, I'm going to be shocked, because I was literally, like, in the Tiger Woods in that moment, watching sports, consuming it regularly, betting on sports. I was like, we'll never see this again. Like, this is all time. This is a one of one. But I feel very differently right now that Scheffler he could close PGA Tour under 3. I wouldn't be shocked at all. And I think, we could get to the point where, we're kicking the tires on, can he calendar slam? Can he, like, is he going to go back-to-back Masters? Is he going to 3 out of 4? Like, people, like, this is all on the table right now. He's about to, step into history, if he continues to play this well. And the fact that nobody else is really making a move is disappointing.
Yep. No, I agree with all that. And we'll talk about the PGA Championship as we get closer. But let's pivot back to the NBA. Let's talk about the 1 p.m. Eastern games first. The Eastern Conference slate. Good job by the NBA sorting it the way they did. That worked well with the drama. What did you make most out of the earlier slate? Did anything jump out outside of the Cavs' absolute ridiculous display of humanity?
I mean, full heart. Thank you to the Magic. I mean, I don't know what else to say. Like, I needed that one big time, and that was huge. So, very excited that they came through there, and they did it in a way that I thought was like, it wasn't as much the Bucks just, kind of olaying and letting them through, as much as it was they went out and got it, which I thought was pretty exciting. The rest of the morning slate, the kind of the premier game, at least from a competitive standpoint, was Knicks Bulls, and the Knicks kind of clinching the 2 seed with that performance, and really just the Knicks, like, playing as hard as they played to the whistle down the entire home stretch. Their win against the Celtics on Thursday, that was something else, man. Like, they're playing hard. I don't ultimately know that I'm going to take them in a series, and we could see them kind of catching a decent price against the likes of the Sixers. The Sixers win 7-8, and so I'm kind of intrigued to see what happens here, because I'm not believing in the Knicks by any stretch of the imagination, but boy, oh boy, do they try hard.
Yeah, I think they. I mean, if Giannis is compromised, and say if you just take Giannis out of the equation, say that he's not going to factor into the entirety of the Eastern playoffs, I think there's a very good case to be made that the Knicks are the second most likely team to win the East. And I agree that, like, if the matchup is against the Sixers, which it likely will be, given the Sixers are like 4.5, 5-point favorites against Miami, I think the market will likely open the Sixers' favorite in that series. And I'm not sure that really should be the case with just how good the Knicks have been with Anunoby. And I know that Randall out is a big problem, but also, like, Randall's really good.
Is it?
He's not. I mean, someone who has wagered a lot on the Knicks the past couple of years and gotten the full Julius Randle experience, there is no worse good player in the NBA than Julius Randle. It is absolutely painful to watch that bloke play basketball. I get that it's good, he's effective overall, but it is absolutely painful to watch.
Dude, they have so much redundancy in the bigs too. Like, I don't think it's that big of an absence. Honestly, if that trickles more usage into the Bojans and the the Josh Hartses of the world, then the Knicks are probably better for it.
Problem is that, like, it's all going to come down to Brunson. Like, I get that, Dante DiVincenzo, he's probably going to pop up like third on some most improved player ballots, and he's been awesome, and he's really lifted to compensate for Randall's absence. And OG Anunoby, he looks a lot better than I would have really expected coming off the elbow, particularly with how kind of bleak it was feeling initially. So they have a little bit of secondary creation, but it's not great. Like Tibbs just doesn't trust Alec Burks or Bojan, like these guys who are more like Tibbs always. It's funny with these coaches and their tendencies. Like when in trouble, Ty Lue always leans on offense. He's like, all right, if things aren't working, we're going to put in Norm Powell for a bigger Zubac, and we're just going to go 5 out and figure it out that way. Did the same thing with the Cavs in those finals runs. With Tibbs, he always leans on defense. Like, if I got to choose between Bojan and Miles McBride, give me Miles McBride because I know it's a guard. So I don't know. Point. I think it's going to be the thing that I would be worried about the Knicks, and as someone who's holding a fair bit of Knicks now to win the East, is I don't think this team has an extra gear because they play at the top gear every single night. And I think also that Brunson, who I would, if I personally had a ballot, I would have him 5th for MVP. I'd have him first team All NBA. I'd have him over Tatum.
I agree.
I think that he is not as good of a basketball player as Jason Tatum because I don't think his game is going to be overall is going to be as resilient in the playoffs just because he's really small. And I think he's going to get really picked at on defense. And if they end up playing the Celtics in the Eastern Conference Finals, I think Brunson's offense will be resilient against playoff defense. And it was against the Heat, even though he had one ankle in that series last year with heroic performances, particularly in the final game. But I think defensively, he's going to get picked on. And I just, having been to the Garden and seen the Knicks like a month ago or so, and just seeing with Brunson, like just how, like when guys like Jimmy Butler pick at him on a switch, it just puts them all in rotation. And then all of a sudden, even if you've got great talent on defense, if you are constantly in rotation, which I think they're going to be, I guess the good thing would be that, against the Sixers, if that is the matchup, Brunson won't get as exploited as much because they just don't have that big wing scorer to really put on him. It's like Joel Embiid is hunting Jalen Brunson on a switch or anything. So that'll be interesting. But yeah, what do you think of the Knicks ceiling?
Eastern Conference 1 win. Eastern Conference Finals, excuse me. Eastern Conference Finals 4-1 loss. I think is probably where we're headed here. I don't know, man. It's notable that that they are very fit, like they're in game shape, which Joel Embiid is not. And I think ultimately, like the fact that there's so much time, particularly in week 1 of the playoffs, the way they spread things out, like Philly's probably going to get their legs under them. But that's going to be the most, if that is what we have in 2-7, that's going to be the most interesting series to price because it's always fascinating when the market is hot on a team like the Sixers, who's the road team in games 1 and 2, right? Like that just makes things more complicated because it's those are coin flips if and when the road team steals game 1 and then takes home court, has such a material impact on the series price. Things are a little fragile. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I tend to think that the Knicks are for real, and that it's not about trying hard when everybody else is just running out the season. They have a couple of things that really are pretty special and work pretty well, and Brunson's at the top of the list.
Yep. Do you have a soft spot for this Knicks team, Drew? All these other Eastern teams are just so gutless in various ways. The Cavs are a disgrace with what they did against the Hornets. The Magic's offense, they're not gutless. They're just they're young and the offense just isn't very good. But the Bucks are an absolute mess. The Sixers, Embiid has underperformed every single year in the playoffs. The Pacers are, I think, just paper tigers. Like this Knicks team, for whatever they're not, the way that they play, the way that they just zoom around the court, how hard they play on defense. Brunson also is just like the most likable player in the league, I think. So, look, if I was against them financially, I'd be cheering for their demise with glee. But given that I'm on them, I think it's going to make it extra special if they make a bit of a run just with the nature of the team that they are. But we'll talk about the East in a bit more depth later on. But on the Western side of that later slate of games, a couple of two, I think, really big surprises in Phoenix just absolutely blowing the doors off of Minnesota as 2-point dogs. And then likewise as 2-point dogs, the Lakers doing the same thing to New Orleans. And we can just talk about that Lakers game now, given that, I mean, the market is going all over the place with this one. New Orleans open favorite. Now it is effectively pick most spots. You can see it MGM if you're watching on YouTube. It is -110 each side. I mean, I guess with both of these, how much do you read into the fact that, Phoenix destroyed Minnesota and there's a rematch, and the Lakers destroyed the Pelicans and there's a rematch?
Well, yeah, both games were instructive, but also kind of a little bit potentially misleading. Suns T-Wolves in particular, I think you can probably suspend a little bit of like, is that going to happen 4 times in a series between those teams? No, of course not. Timberwolves probably were the right favorites in that game, and they probably are fair opening favorites in game 1 against the Suns. And I didn't see anything from the Suns that was like especially like, oh, eye-opening. Like, whoa, did you see what Bradley Beal did? Like, yeah, he's healthy. Like, he's capable of doing this. We know this. Like, that's not a surprise. And I think with a little bit more attention to detail and matchup specific planning for the Suns, that you're going to get a little bit better defense out of the Timberwolves, and I think that sets up well to kind of Timberwolves be the right side, at least in terms of what we're kind of early seeing series price wise. The Lakers-Pelicans is more interesting to talk about, I think, because number one, that there's this 7-8 game coming that is a rematch, obviously, and in New Orleans, and the Lakers got bet today. Big boy money came in hot and heavy on that Lakers team, and it looked like it could have gotten even closer to pick. Like I think what 3.5 to 2 was sort of the market momentum there, and somebody obviously was kind of willing to backstop the Pelicans at 2. Brandon Ingram was back and he looks fine, but Zion Williamson looks like he's a little bit out of gas at this point, which is a bad sign to turn around and play the Lakers and Anthony Davis again. So I think Pelicans are in trouble. The fact that the Pelicans are in the play-in game, like, all right, again, full transparency, the Lakers have done me, I think, no favors in the last 5 years. I feel like almost every time I take a strong position for, on or against, they tend to, it's kind of do me dirty. But I needed them to come up with this win to put the Pelicans into this spot to get plus 125 home, that the Pelicans will be in the plan. And now I need the Lakers to take care of business and push the Pelicans down into the final elimination game in the hopes that somebody can beat them. It's there are a lot of things to be concerned about the Pelicans right now, and the Lakers expose them in a lot of ways. And the Lakers don't necessarily have any kind of the telltale LeBron James playoff kind of team identity at all. That's a very different way that they're succeeding right now, and it's caught me by surprise, surely, this whole last half of the season. And I think ultimately, if they can find the same sort of offense that they found for the majority of the first 3 quarters of this game, then they could probably beat the Pelicans.
Yeah, I think this Lakers team, like since basically the start of February, the offense, they've got the number 3 offense in the league, which I think is really significant given how much of a slog the offense was, particularly in the half court for the whole season, and how just kind of plodding it was even in the playoffs last year when they made the Western Conference Finals. I think, to me, the 2 kind of biggest winners out of the day and everything that happened and transpired with matchups and everything, in a way, it's just the Nuggets and the Celtics, who have seemed destined to meet in the finals for a long time. And now the Celtics, with how it is broken, now that could get kind of thrown out the window a little bit if the Sixers lose as 5-point favorites in the play-in game, though, they could also lose the second play-in game in that case, and then it would be magnificent for the Celtics. But if the Celtics are going to go Heat and then Cavs or Magic as the pass to the Eastern Conference Finals, then that is about as easy as it gets. And I understand the fears around Miami and everything, but the Celtics, if this Celtics team loses to that Miami team, then everyone has to go. You trade Tatum for anything, and you just start again. I don't think they're going to lose that series though. And then with the Nuggets, the fact that they get into the 2 seed, so they'll have home court against Minnesota if it comes to that. Minnesota and Phoenix, who maybe are the 2 teams who, in a way, matchup-wise, have given the Nuggets the most problems. At kind of completely different ends of the spectrum as well, with pull-up jump shooting with Phoenix against Jokic, and then just massive size from Minnesota. The fact that one of them is just going to be gone, I think, is good for the Nuggets. I think the interesting thing, though, is that if the Pelicans beat the Lakers, then the Nuggets are going to be extremely short to win that series in the 2-7. Yeah. If it's the Lakers, though, who are kind of trending towards favorite in this one, do you think that? I think there's a thought that because the Nuggets have handled the Lakers so much over the past 12 months or so and swept them in the playoffs, that that is going to be a fairly non-competitive series. Do you think that the Lakers have shown the past couple of months a ceiling where they are more likely to beat the Nuggets than maybe popular perception?
More likely to beat the Nuggets than they were this time last year, yeah. I think so. Yeah. A little bit. And I think there were lessons learned in the Western Conference Finals last year on the part of the Lakers, which is you don't have an answer defensively. So you better find your offense and you better make it hurt. And I think ultimately, if they can do that and they can catch, because the thing about the Lakers today, it felt like all of the ancillary pieces were all peaking, right? Like everybody's kind of everybody on the same exact trajectory is starting to hit their peak. And that's kind of important. And ultimately, if they have enough offense to kind of do any kind of damage to the second unit, if there is many minutes, particularly in games 1 and games 1 and 2, can they steal one of the first 2 and then kind of have an opportunity to either take this thing 2-2 back to Denver for game 5, or take this thing 3-1 back to Denver for game 5? This could be an interesting series. And I think there are less miles on, in general, the important pieces for the Lakers this year. The supporting cast is playing better. And I think that in general, the experience that they have from last year's Western Conference Finals should bear some dividend. I don't think that the Nuggets are clearly a better team than they were this time last year, and the Lakers do seem like they are better.
Yeah, I think this Lakers team might have a bit higher of a ceiling just because I think they just have a bit more firepower on offense, where something that I'm not sure it gets forgotten, or maybe it's just I kind of sublimated a little bit, but like the Lakers, they basically just binned D'Angelo Russell in that series against Denver. And by the end of the series, he was benched, and Dennis Schroeder was starting and playing massive minutes just because D'Angelo Russell just couldn't live with Jamal Murray. And I think that Russell is just, one, he's just playing a lot better than he was. And I get that Schroeder, D'Angelo Russell is just a better basketball player than Dennis Schroeder. And I get that why he was benched in that series, but I think Russell has made himself important enough where he kind of has to be out there, and they're just going to have to die with, his deficiencies on defense. And if he can just hang a little bit more defensively in that series, should it come to it, then they just need his offense, because otherwise it's just too much of a slog. And if you put Russell and Reeves and LeBron and Rui and Davis, and now I think Dinwiddie is actually pretty useful for them. I think this team is a little bit better. Also, I think people forget too that LeBron missed the end of the season last year, where he had the weird foot thing that he did against Dallas, and they just didn't have a lot of continuity. It was clear, some playoff games, he just didn't have it. And then he would just kind of gut through it. He seems to be in a bit of a better spot health-wise. So does Anthony Davis, notwithstanding this back spasms thing, which seems to be a non-issue. But yeah, you look at this matchup with New Orleans, and I mean, the Pelicans, they just don't seem to really have the ceiling where Zion just hasn't been. He was, he showed for that one season where he's a +5 EPM type of guy, and he's been a +2, +2.5. That's been trending up this season. And it just, for whatever reason, the Lakers beat them 3-1 in the season series. New Orleans really needed to win. today, and they just got absolutely belted. So
Yeah.
I think it is likely advantage Lakers, and I think that the Lakers are going to end up. They will be priced a significant dog if they do win, and then they play the Nuggets. But I don't think they're completely drawing dead in that series.
No, we agree on this. I'm glad you brought up the health thing with LeBron, because what I remember from December as the Lakers went on to be the in-season tournament champions. I don't know if you remember that. That happened this season. Kind of the big takeaway was like in these high-profile games, like LeBron has it. He's not dealing with the lingering issues of the groin injury that seemed to have like a shadow on him for like 2 years. Like he's just in a better state physically, and I think that will matter. And the other thing that was kind of a big, at least I think, big pivot for the Lakers was their bench was this time last year. Their bench was so bad that the starters had zero margin for error, none. Like the starters had to generate a lead before they got their first break. They had to kind of close gaps regularly. Like it was just hard. And that starting group, and you mentioned it with D'Angelo Russell ultimately getting benched in the playoffs, like there was only one person that could create offense, and it was LeBron. And now they actually have more avenues to create offense, which I think definitely should be, kind of helpful for a matchup against the Nuggets. And I mean, like, are they going to have to win games 125, 124? Yes. But can they do it? I think they can. And I think, we're a step ahead of ourselves because they do have to beat the Pelicans, and the Pelicans are at home, and the Pelicans are, they've seen them once now. I think I watched a lot of Pelicans basketball in April, Jay. Too much. In fact, too much.
I've had a Trey Murphy. It's not really fun.
Man. And I got to tell you, I needed them to take some more losses than they ultimately did. And there were a couple of games where I'm just like, how are these guys doing it? And the way they were doing it was just drive after drive after drive from Zion, like just getting to the basket over and over and over again. And you're watching, you're counting, you're like, he can't keep doing this. Like at some point he's going to freaking hit the wall. And I felt like today, it felt like he hit the wall. And so whether he can bounce back like on the snap and be kind of fully fit and ready to go, I don't know if that I'm willing to bet on it. And I think that could be ultimately the deciding factor that gets the Lakers into the 7.
They just have this fundamental flaw, which some teams they have and just kind of gloss over because they have a really good net rating. But it's the same thing with Cleveland. Like Cleveland's just not going to do anything when they're playing Jared Allen and Evan Mobley together. And I get that they have to do that because they're two of their 3 best players without Darius Garland's falling off, but like they just don't work. Like it just doesn't work having 2 bigs like that, particularly if they're going to get absolutely annihilated on the glass like they did against the Knicks in the playoffs last year. Like that's the one thing that you should be able to not have happen to you by playing 2 bigs. And it's the same thing with New Orleans. It's like, all right, well, Zion's can't play center on defense and he can't shoot. So it's like it's just this huge structural flaw in the team. And him and Ingram have such kind of redundant, they just kind of overlap too much. They don't amplify each other's strengths. It's like the antithesis of Murray Jokic, who completely amplify, and they're obviously just better. Well, Jokic is just so much better than either of Ingram and Zion, but it's just, what you kind of picture a Pelicans possession. Like compare picturing a Pelicans possession in your head to picturing a Nuggets possession in your head. Nuggets possession, you picture Jokic just passing to a wide open KCP for a 3 after some off-ball movement. Pelicans, you just picture Zion sizing up, no one really doing anything, standing around, Valanciunas like in the dunker spot, and then Zion just burrowing to the rim. And often he does finish because he's awesome, but it just doesn't seem like this team. There's no real theory of the team. Like Trey Murphy should be starting, but there's no real spot for him because Zion has to play the 4 and Ingram the 3, and then you need Herb Jones in there, but you also need a point guard. So CJ has to start. So it just doesn't, the team just doesn't make a great deal of sense at the moment. And I think that they're probably going to be headed for an elimination game on Friday after they, look, it's a coin flip game, but it certainly feels like the Lakers are going to win. Kind of feels like the Warriors are going to win as well, as 1.5 point favorites at Sacramento, rematch of last year's fairly epic 7-game series that had a bit of a dud game 7. But the Kings, obviously missing Kevin Huerter, missing Malik Monk. They've slid. They haven't really slid that much. I think they're 4-5 since Monk went down, but they fall into the 9. and they're dogs at home in an elimination game to a Warriors team that has been up and down, but seemed to have found itself a little bit. Do you agree with the market and having Golden State favored on the road?
Very, very, very small favorites for me. This is very much a coin flip game, and I need the Kings to lose. please. And this is, I feel bad because like they've fought hard all season. Like this team tries, they're well coached. They continue to develop. There's a lot of positive things to say about the Kings, and I've had enough. Steph Curry sticking his finger in my eye. That if he ultimately goes home, then so be it. But this is a fun, interesting game. Last year's Game 7 was Kings small favorites, and now they're here, small dogs, and that's personnel based. Because certainly the Warriors are not a better team than they were in their playoff matchup last year. In that an epic 7-game series. The Kings are worse off because of injury, and I think that's spelling most of the delta here. But the total is fun. Because people will remember last year's playoff series was set up so perfectly for a late series under bonanza. You had like 240 points on the open in games 1 and 2, and they just fast paced, just so many possessions. Throttle was off, scoring. And that really kind of helped anchor that that was going to be a high scoring series. And you had Game 7 close at I believe it was 229.5, which I think off the top of my head, don't hold me to this, was the highest Game 7 total that we've ever had in NBA playoffs history. And the game ended up 120-100 Warriors. You're right, it was a little bit of a fizzle. It didn't have as much excitement as you would have hoped from a Game 7, but most of that was just the Warriors just being the more experienced and more efficient team, particularly down the stretch. So I think as I look at this particular game and this matchup, I can't pick a winner. I think it's going to come down to whoever can execute late in the game. And I'm excited to at least take a position on the second half under, if not a full game under, at 226.5. I think this is about 4 points too high.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I think the only kind of note that I would have on this game, and I think it's maybe a little bit of a hidden thing, is that when you think about the Warriors and their somewhat underwhelming record and the fact they've ended up a 10 seed, like within that is the fact that post All-Star break, Stephen Curry's been playing 31 minutes a game. And that is the big thing, I think, in this, is that if he needs to, he'll just play 40 minutes in this game. And that is a massive swing for a team that can't really, I don't think, create great offense without Steph on the court. I mean, they're kind of remodeled lineups, and the fact that they play a little bit smaller now, like when they have, when it's the Curry, Thompson, Wiggins, Kuminga, Draymond lineup, like that lineup has an 8 plus 18.1 net rating. You put in Podziemski in place of Thompson plus 12.3 net rating. Like it just does seem to work. Obviously on offense, why wouldn't it work? You have Steph Curry in a small lineup with Draymond Green playing at the 5. That's been kind of the defining NBA structural lineup of the past decade. And then defensively, it seems like they have just enough size, and Draymond, I think Draymond still might be the best defensive player in the league. All this talk about Gobert, Wemby, Jonathan Isaac, Draymond's still right there. Draymond's still incredible. And he is still anchoring that. And these guys, I do think, have an extra gear in a one-off game. And the extra gear mostly is just playing more minutes and just less kind of, less trace, less. I don't mind Trace Jackson Davis. He's fine, but
he's fine.
Yeah, he doesn't need to play over Kuminga. I don't understand why Kuminga just doesn't play 36 minutes each night. He's just better than these other guys. But that's for Steve Kerr to decide. Dario Saric, Moses Moody, these guys will just get minimized a little bit in a one-off game. And the Kings they are what they are. Sabonis and Fox are really good, but they're not, all world. And then the depth has taken a massive hit, and they're just not as good anymore. And I think the Warriors, they should take care of business here. But it's probably going to need an excellent Steph game, and he'll probably provide that. All right, Drew, the countdown is on. Wednesday is the 100-day mark to the Summer Olympics in Paris. Tune in this summer on NBC and Peacock to see the greatest athletes in the world go for gold in the City of Light. Paris, one of my favorite cities, Drew. I actually think it's underrated, which is a strange thing to say about Paris, which is kind of pretty commonly rated highly, but I think it's actually underrated in its own sense.
Yeah, it's the number one power-rated city in the world, and Jay's saying it's underrated. That's interesting. It's like Scottie Scheffler right now. Yeah,
it's Steph Curry. Steph Curry's underrated
Curry,
historically. Yeah. Paris is the Steph Curry of certainly European cities. Not a European city is Minneapolis, and where we'll go now. The Wolves are dogs to the Phoenix Suns. They really butchered things, Minnesota, because they just won that game as 2-point favorites against the Suns. Then they would be playing the Pelicans in. Well, no, they would.
No, they'd be waiting. Yeah, they'd be the 2
seed, and they would get to play. They'd probably end up against Phoenix as well. Who knows? But the fact that they weren't able to take care of business doesn't bode particularly well for this matchup, just given that the Suns have trucked them 3 times. And I do think I'm seeing Wolves fans on Twitter. There's a lot of Wolves fans who pop up in my timeline with all the Naz Reid propaganda that I tweet out. Now the algorithm for me is just like, oh, here's all these tweets about like what Monty Morris is bringing the Wolves. Like, I don't care at all, but I guess I'll consume it. But a lot of Wolves fans are justifying the losses for different reasons. I think the first one was like a schedule thing, and then Cat missed the second one, and then this one Cat's just come back, and Bradley Beal's amazing. It's like, all right, well, I don't think this is a great matchup for you guys, given that the beauty of Minnesota is they have all this size on defense, and they can just block off the rim with Gobert, and they force a lot of mid-range shots. Well, now you get to play a team that all they want to do is take mid-range shots. And I think that Minnesota might be in trouble here. And I agree with the Suns being favored, but what do you think?
Ooh. I'm not there that they should be favored.
Okay.
I think this is a little bit of recency bias from what people saw today, and really just the head-to-heads for the season, which I'm not going to make the same excuses that the T-Wolves fans are going to make, but they don't all. None of it matters.
It is noisy.
It's all noise. Yeah, noise, whatever. But I will say though that like there was a whiff of this doesn't really matter as much to us as it does to you in this game today. Certainly the level of intensity and just purpose on the part of Anthony Edwards, who's the key player for the Timberwolves in this series, I think is important. And the Suns have some structural failures with the way they're rostered defensively that I think the Timberwolves are going to have some opportunities to really take advantage of. And I think even better than just getting involved in the series price, where I think there's a small edge to play Minnesota here. I think just betting Minnesota game 1 is the right play.
Yeah, my issue with this series for Minnesota is that I think of almost any team outside of probably Denver, the Suns are going to benefit as much as anyone from just shortening their rotation in the playoffs. And you kind of saw that a little bit in this matchup against Minnesota, where like so they have their 5 starters who are all awesome. And they have Royce O'Neal, who's going to become the 6th guy. Eric Gordon was out today. But outside of those 6, and then Eubanks, which isn't great, but whatever, playing backup center, no one else played more than 9 minutes. And I think that just being able to run these guys into the ground, like in these playoff games, like Durant, Beal, who is now playing heavy minutes capably, Booker, Grayson Allen, who I think will be able to be out there on the floor unless Anthony Edwards absolutely cooks him, but I'm not sure Anna's really at that level where I'm that afraid of that. I think that just having those guys be able to play 43 minutes a night in the playoffs, which they've shown that certainly Durant and Booker have shown they can do, I think that is pretty material. And when I think about teams kind of scaling up for the playoffs and how resilient their games are in the playoffs, like this Wolves team, like I'm not really sure they have an extra gear on offense. Like this team repeatedly, and I've seen the stuff about how, they have the number 1 fourth quarter offense since the All-Star break. Like that's pretty noisy. And then 2, they've had a pretty easy schedule as well. And I just don't trust this team's offense whatsoever. I've watched too much Wolves basketball of all season, and just seeing what Cat and Ant do at the end of games, seeing Jaden McDaniels, who thinks that he's T-Mac, like peak T-Mac, every time he gets the ball. So I'm going to the hoop and pulling up mid-range. It's my time to shine. So, Jaden, play first team All-NBA defense, first team All Defense level D, and just kind of shoot in the corner. Don't do anything else. Transition, fine, take it to the hoop. But outside of that, like, he's doing spin moves and taking fadeaways and stuff. I just don't think this team on offense is particularly intelligent. And the defense, I just worry that it's not the right defense. It's the best defense in the league, but it's one whose, I think, strengths are a little minimized against this Suns team.
Yeah. Okay. That's fair. I think, again, like you're all of those points are very, very fair. I'm not going to take a position on the series price here. I'm going to back the Timberwolves in games 1 and 2 probably, and then flip to the Suns as we kind of get later into the series. If there's a game 6 or game 7 and this turns into who can create from an isolation standpoint, the Suns have this in spades in every single category. So that's probably how this likely goes down. Yeah, I mean, if the Timberwolves can hold court in 1 and 2 and steal 1 in Phoenix, then I think they can move on to the next round. But ultimately, I think this is one where you're going to see some serious changes of opinion as we go through the series, depending on the outcomes.
Yep, I agree. It's a weird series because they're both weird teams in their own right. I think the marquee series of round 1. It's not Cavs Magic. It is Clippers Mavs in the 4-5, where the Mavs open like plus 130 to win the series. They are now favorites, minus 115, with some skepticism, despite what Adrian Wojnarowski's insistence to the other side that Kawhi Leonard's knee may not be right. Ty Lue's quotes have just been really ominous, saying hopefully he's back for game 1. I think it's a massive red flag that he wasn't able to come back at all in the regular season and even just play, like a 12-minute stint as they did the other night. Now he's just going to be rolled out for game 1. And I don't think it's realistic to expect that, we're getting peak Kawhi Leonard, the guy who is, in the midst of MVP conversations at the start of February, that guy is just going to be rolled out and be there against the Mavs team that is, kind of look like close to the best team in the league over the past 20 games. Do you agree with the Mavs being favored here despite not having home court?
I do. And I kind of want to get a little weird and play like Mavs sweep. Yeah. Because, the Clippers, there's nothing let's say, what is a fair price for a Mavs sweep if Kawhi doesn't play or if he's just not anywhere close to what we saw when the Clippers were the best team in the NBA, which feels like 100 years ago, but it was just like 100 days ago. Kawhi was such an important part of that, kind of equation. Their ability to backfill is non-existent. They're a solvable team. The red flags exist everywhere with the Clippers. And I think the Mavericks, everything we've seen from them since the PGA Washington trade, and to a degree, the Gafford trade, this is the real deal. Luka is the real deal in the playoff setting where, kind of fourth quarters, creating offense matters. And while it never feels great to trust the Mavericks because they do like to play games that are closer than they ought to be, it is still pretty surprising to me that there's enough market respect for this Clippers squad, considering what we've seen from them in the last month.
Yep, I agree. I think that, sometimes, my automatic position is to fade the idea that a team is cooked because they've entered the playoffs with a bit of a whimper, like last year with the Nuggets, who everyone was, a lot of people I think were writing off or saying it was a big red flag that they kind of sleptwalked to the last month of the season. I was much more of the belief that if you have like nothing to play for, you're just going to look more apathetic against teams that do have something to play for. Same thing with Boston. The fact that like Boston got trucked at home by the Knicks and they're losing these random games, losing a couple of games to Atlanta, I just don't care. Like I give that like 0% thought or adjustment to Boston because they lose these random games that are completely meaningless because they finished 14 games clear in the 1 seed. With the Clippers, I think it's a bit more of a problem because, one, it went on for a lot longer. Like it's been like 2 months of them being not particularly great. And then also I just worry that like Harden just doesn't look the same. Paul George has dealt with these niggling injuries, even though like health-wise he seems fine. He had that epic game against Cleveland. But it's really just all about Kawhi. Like if Kawhi is at 70%, then I think they're just going to lose to Dallas. If he's at 100%, sure, the Clippers should be favored in the series with home court,
Right.
but I don't think there's any reason to believe that, that it's reasonable to say that is a greater than 50% chance that Kawhi Leonard is just going to be 100% the best version of himself that he's been this season. And then when you just factor in how this Mavs team has just completely fallen into place and just how much sense the team makes now, like this is a small sample, but their new starting lineup with Kyrie, Luka, Derek Jones Jr., Gafford, and Washington, they have a plus 15 net rating. They have by far the best defense in the NBA when they have that group on the court. They have an elite offense as well. There's a little bit of shooting luck, but not really, like 36% shooting for the Mavs from 3, 34% for opponents. And the team just seems to now make sense. The fact that you can always have one of Doncic or Kyrie on the court. You can always have a good center, which they haven't had previously with Luka consistently. And then you just have these role players like Derek Jones Jr., like PJ Washington, like Dante Exum, who can all defend, who can all, well, in theory, Derek Jones Jr. is kind of shooting a little bit more now, but these guys, they don't clog the offense to the point where it's severely detrimental, at least that Luka and Kyrie can't problem solve around it. So, I think this team is loaded. I think they are the second best team in the West. All in Mavs to win the West. I think that the draw really broke for them. The fact that they don't have to play Denver until the Western Conference Finals, and that Denver are going to have to go through, a pretty difficult round 2 series to get there, and may even have a difficult round 1 series if it's the Lakers. I think that the Mavs, if their path is, the Clippers team with a sub 100% Kawhi, or maybe not Kawhi at all, and then going up against, worst case, Oklahoma City, a group that has never won a playoff game and has some, structural deficiencies which might get exposed in the playoffs that we haven't seen attacked. And then also, there's a 50% chance just about that OKC have to play the Lakers in round 1. Like that's a pretty tough series if that's the matchup for Oklahoma City. So the Mavericks may have home court. They may have home court in round 2 as well. So I think that if you can still get any 10-1 about on the Mavs, I think that is a bet.
Yeah, no disagreement. They're built exactly correctly for playoff success.
Yep. All right. Go Mavs. All right, we are done. Don't forget to check out NBCSports.com for more information to help you with your wagers. Thanks to those watching on the NBC Sports YouTube channel. And if you're listening to us in podcast form, don't forget to rate and subscribe. Also a reminder to find all your favorite NBC Sports shows on Amazon Music. Just head to amazon.com/NBC Sports. From Jay Croucher and Drew Dinsick, we'll see you tomorrow.